Hi everyone, I'm Kat and welcome to my channel, Naturally Beautiful Girl. So today I'm bringing you a little bit of a different video. If you've been watching my channel for a while, I've mentioned this a few times. I've been on a bit of a mission to find a pressed setting powder that I love. At this point, I've tested 4 different pressed setting powders in the clean beauty space, and so I thought today I would bring you my thoughts, tell you what I like about each one, tell you what I don't like, and hopefully you'll find this helpful, especially if you are in the market for a pressed setting powder. And I will start out by saying this, I do have oily skin, and I definitely think that affects what I'm looking for in a setting powder. Believe it or not, even my under eyes get oily. Like, every part of my skin really does get oily, and so I really am looking for products that are going to set things in place, keep things from creasing, keep things from moving around. But with that being said, I also don't want things to look powdery or cakey or anything like that. I want it to have as much of a skin-like finish as possible, but just not have a lot of creasing occur. I have some fine lines under my eyes. I don't have a ton yet. I just forgot how old I am. I am 27, and so I do have some fine lines occurring, but that's not like a major concern for me at this point. I'm not saying that to brag. I am fully aware that my fine lines are coming. I'm starting to notice them more every passing year, and that's normal. That's natural. It's just a part of aging. It's not always fun, but it is what it is. So that's not something that's a huge concern for me at the moment, but I definitely do have some fine lines, and just the way that my skin moves under my eyes, and if I smile and all of that, my skin under my eyes naturally creases, which then translates into my makeup creasing. With all these pressed setting powders, none of them quite compare to my 14E setting powder. This has by far been my favorite setting powder. I basically worn the label off the top of it. Even though I love the setting powder, and I find that it just really outperforms pretty much everything else on the market that I've tried in terms of locking everything in place, having a nice skin-like finish, not having it look too cakey or heavy or anything like that. So this is a loose setting powder, and the reason I began this journey of looking for a pressed setting powder is because loose setting powders are messy. Like, they're messy to use, especially when you're traveling. They can get messy. The packaging of loose setting powders is often a bit bulkier too, so when you're traveling, it's just harder to travel with something shaped like this rather than something flatter and more compact like this. And I love this setting powder. It outperforms any of the pressed setting powders that I'm going to be talking about in this video. Spoiler alert. But I was really hoping I could find something that would live up to this one. And there are some pressed setting powders that definitely worked better for me than others, but if you really just want your concealer or whatever you're setting to stay in place, but still look nice and not look too heavy or cakey, definitely check this one out. Like, I talk about it all the time, and there's a reason why. It is just really, really good. Let's start off then with the first pressed setting powder that I tried out that really kind of launched this whole journey. And that is the Care Weiss pressed setting powder. I have the shade Translucent, and I did a whole video trying out a bunch of Care Weiss products. I'm going to link that video up above in case you'd like to learn more about my thoughts on Care Weiss products. But I have to say, out of all the ones I tried, this is one that I really just wasn't that impressed with. And I've been testing it in the process of filming this video. I decided to test it again and see if my thoughts have changed at all. And the one thing I will say is I tested all of these setting powders with a number of different concealers, but I did test all of them consistently with my Ilia True Skin Serum Concealer, because that is honestly one of my top concealers. I've been using it for a really long time. I understand how it works, how it performs, how it wears on me, and I definitely know how it works with my 14E setting powder, so that was like a very good baseline to compare it with. All of these pressed powders, including this one, definitely perform better when I have a concealer like the Ilia True Skin Serum Concealer, because that is a bit more of a self-setting concealer. It kind of dries down. It's not as creamy. It's not as moisturizing, which I know a lot of people like really creamy, really moisturizing concealers, especially if you have drier skin. But for me and my skin type, having something that dries down a bit more is definitely something that works better for me. And I definitely found, not unsurprisingly, that the setting powder doesn't have to be quite as good to set that concealer, whereas if you have a creamy concealer, you really, really need a good setting powder to lock that in place. So I did go ahead and test this powder out again, and honestly, it's okay. My main problem with it is I found that in order to get enough powder under my eyes to begin setting my under eye concealer, that things started to look cakey. And it was just this weird balance of like, I could touch under my eye and still feel that my concealer was tacky and not really set. But the more of this powder that I add on, the more kind of cakey it looks under my eyes. So I would get to this point where I'd finally get my concealer kind of set, and then it would look cakey, which is just not great. And even with getting that much powder under my eyes to actually set everything, it's still creased. It's just okay. I know some people really like the setting powder, and I could see where you would like it if you had less oily skin and you didn't need to use a lot of this product. So if you just use a little bit, it looks nice. But if you have to build it up at all to actually set something, it just doesn't look good. And so I would probably recommend passing on this one, because honestly, this is the most expensive powder that I tried out of the bunch. Obviously, it has probably the most beautiful packaging out of the bunch, and it is refillable packaging, which is really nice for sustainability reasons, but it just doesn't work that well. It's just not my recommendation. I would definitely suggest passing on this translucent setting powder from Weiss. So we're gonna move on to the next setting powder I tried. And this one here is the Vapor. This is their perfecting powder, and this is the pressed version. So they do have a pressed and the loose version. I've not tried the loose version, though I am curious in some ways to know if like the whole process of pressing a setting powder just causes it to not work as well, because given my experience with these 4 setting powders, I would say that's true, but I honestly don't know. It is a translucent shade. As you can see, it is quite white. We'll be talking about shades of setting powders in a minute, because that actually feeds into some of my thoughts on one of them. But I did pick this up when I was doing a whole video testing out Vapor products. I will link that up above in case you want to know my thoughts on Vapor products. But I did like this setting powder. It's solid. It's not as good as my 14E setting powder, but it doesn't look cakey. It will crease eventually, which I don't love, but it's okay. Like it's okay. It's not terrible. It doesn't perform up to the level of my 14E, but it's not cakey. I would say middle of the road on this one. If you have drier skin, I think this could work really well for you. However, with my oily skin type, it's just not a product that I reach for a lot, because I don't want my concealer creasing. If it does crease, I want it to be very minimal, and that's the whole thing. You want something that you can tap a little bit of the creases out when you're on the go and everything's fine. But with these, you do get some pretty major creasing, and that was definitely the case with me and this press setting powder. So the next one I moved on to is this one from Perez. This is their I'm reading the label here, Corn Translucent Powder. And this is supposed to be like a one shade fit all powder, and it's not quite a one shade fit all powder. So here's what the powder looks like. This is the one and only shade of this powder. And it's supposed to be translucent, but I find that it's not quite translucent. Okay, so I've got a whole bunch of it on my finger here, but you can see it. Like there's a shade to it. And I think that this setting powder would be really good if you have a deeper skin tone. And I like that. I think that's awesome. But if you have a fair or lighter skin tone, it's not so good. So if you have a deeper skin tone, a lot of times these really bright white translucent powders can look really kind of bright white and on your skin, and it just doesn't look great. And the idea, I think, behind this one being slightly tinted is to help counteract that problem, which is fine, except for the fact that the color of the powder is actually deeper than my skin tone. And that's where the problem starts. So I actually like how this setting powder performs. I think it's pretty good. I do get creases, more creases than my 14E setting powder, but it's not bad. And I think that this honestly would be higher in my ranking of pressed setting powders if it wasn't for the tone, because this setting powder looks too dark under my eyes. It actually deepens the color of my concealer, which is the exact opposite of what you want your concealer to do. You want it to brighten under your eyes. You typically use a shade a little bit lighter than your foundation, though for me, most concealers don't come in a shade lighter than my foundation, so I just use the same shade as my foundation. but you definitely don't want it to be deeper than your foundation. And that's where I run into a problem with this pressed setting powder. It's just too deep. That being said, if you have a medium to deeper skin tone and you are struggling with setting powders being too light, looking white on your skin, I would highly recommend checking this out because I think that this product would solve that problem. But if you're on the fairer side of the spectrum in terms of skin tone, this isn't the best product. I like the idea. I think it's a pretty solid in terms of how it performs, but in the shade, it just doesn't quite cut it for me. And then the final pressed setting powder I have tried out is this one here. And this is the Bio Base Baked Brightener from Well People. And I feel like I've heard a lot of people talking about this pressed setting powder over the years. And Well People redid some of their products. I never tried out the original version, but this is the one I tried out. And I honestly have to say, out of these 4, I would rank this one the highest for me. So I actually really like this one because it is quite white. And okay, so you can definitely see the difference there on my finger. It is a very white setting powder, but I like that because it actually helps to brighten under my eyes. So as I said, a lot of times the under eye concealer that I'm using is not really lighter in shade than my foundation. And I definitely don't want it to get any deeper. And this product definitely helps to brighten it, which I like. I really like how that looks. Is it the best in setting? No, it's about equal in terms of setting ability to like the Vapor, to the Perez, but I do like the brightening aspect of it. So if I am wearing a concealer like the Ilia True Skin Serum Concealer, or actually the new, well, it's new to me, but the Saint Cosmetics concealer, that one also works well with this one. Those two are more self-setting concealers, so they don't need as much setting powder. They just kind of set naturally on their own. I'll use this, dust a little bit on, it'll set, and then it's also brightening as well, which I really like the look of. I will say though, I am using this setting powder today and I definitely am noticing some creasing. I put it on not that long ago and I already am noticing some creasing. I always am. Though if I use like a minimal amount of concealer or if I don't get too much eye cream on, like there's some variabilities in the steps prior to applying a setting powder that will affect a little bit how the pressed powder performs. But overall, I like this one. But for the reason that I mentioned with the Perez pressed powder, if you have a deeper skin tone, I would probably not recommend this product just because it is really brightening. But if you are on the fairer side of the spectrum, it is good. So to boil down and give my quick summary, if you have a fair to light skin tone, I would go with this one. If you have a skin tone that's more on the deeper side of the spectrum, I would go with this one because I think it is the most likely to not be white or have a white cast on your skin. If you are somewhere in the middle and just want something that's just middle of the road, I think the Vapor is great. Like I said, it doesn't really brighten and it doesn't really deepen. It's just kind of right in the middle, so that's a good option. And I would just overall pass on the Kara Weiss. I think it's really expensive. I don't think it's worth the price at all. And I think in terms of just being a very generic setting powder, the Vapor just outperforms and it's a better price. So hopefully you found this helpful. I know this is a lot of ideas and thoughts, but I've been testing these out for a while and I thought that you guys would find this helpful for me to boil down my thoughts and share them with you. Let us know in the comment section down below, what is your favorite setting powder? Period. Is it loose? Is it pressed? Let us know all that in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Also subscribe to my channel. Check me out on Instagram. I'm at naturallybeautifulgirl for more content there and to hang out with me more. And once again, thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye.